Hi, my name is Ethan. If you've ever known me, you might know me as a few things. Perhaps you know me as the powerlifter. Not that I can lift half as much as that, but you know. Or maybe you know me as the guy who plays the cello during worship time, or mass. Or maybe you just know me as the guy who really loves French cuisine. Now, to be clear, I am all those things. I do love to powerlift. I do love to play the cello, and I do love to cook a good coq au vin from time to time. But see, I have a secret, a very deep secret, a very dark secret. It's one that I've been very afraid to tell the world for quite a while. Are you ready? My name is Ethan, and I was diagnosed with schizophrenia in the October of 2023, following a leave of absence I took from WashU the semester of. Really, it began with an onset of auditory and visual hallucinations that began the fall prior in 2022, back when I was still first starting out. And by the end of that year, it had grown so bad that my life had become something of a living nightmare, a hell in which I could never tell what was real and what wasn't. If you didn't know, schizophrenia is a condition that affects the way somebody thinks, behaves, and interprets reality, usually through a combination of hallucinations, delusions, mania, and so on. As for me, I tend to experience hallucinations both in the auditory and visual senses, as well as an onset of other more negative symptoms ranging from generalized anxiety, depressive disorders, bouts of mania, panic attacks, in other words, all the fun stuff. People often ask what it is that I see and hear. And the real answer is that changes day to day. Now, based on what you might be seeing in the TVs or the movies, you may think that I see dead people like that kid from The Sixth Sense, or that I hear voices that go and tell me to kill everyone around me all the time. Now, believe it or not, Criminal Minds is not exactly an accurate representation of very severe and chronic mental disorders in real life. Reality is sort of different. As for what I see, one of the most common things are what I like to call shadow people. Essentially people who might look just like you or me, but aren't actually there. Spooky, right? Sometimes they're actual flickers, things in the corner of my eye that I have to do a double take to make sure that they weren't there. But sometimes it's not so clear cut. Sometimes it could just be a man in a jacket walking past me. It could be a schoolgirl in a dress going to her next class. It could just be some random guy in a t-shirt that I see at the gym. Who knows? Maybe I'm so far gone that I'm standing in an empty auditorium talking in front of who I only think are a bunch of real people. You're real though, right? Right? It wasn't a rhetorical question. You are though, right? Okay, just making sure. I see other things too. Smoke coming out of buildings that aren't there. Doors and windows opening on their own, giant spiders the size of tiles crawling up everywhere. And then there are the times where it looks like something you might actually expect out of a Hollywood horror film. Sometimes I see people whose faces are so distorted that I can't even make them out. Sometimes I'll see giant eldritch monsters that you might expect out of an H.P. Lovecraft novel more than Walking to Summers. Sometimes I'll see something like a clown that you might see from Stephen King's novel It, or maybe the way John Wayne Gacy looked like when he put on the Pogo identity. As for what I hear, it's mostly mindless drawl, conversations between two people that I've never known, talking about their routine, how they went to school, their work days, how they went to the trip to the beach, basically things I don't really care about, to be honest. But sometimes it's not always like that. Sometimes they whisper to me, murmuring up on me in the middle of the day. Sometimes they scream at me in the middle of the night, making sure that I don't get a single night of sleep. But sometimes they tell me worse things, like how useless I am, how everyone around me secretly hates me and is plotting against me and hopes that I never succeed, or how I'll never be able to live a normal life again. That last part is true. I won't be able to live a normal life ever again. There will never be another day for the rest of my life where I won't have to worry about the next medication, the next symptom, the worsening of every one of those symptoms, and more. Now, as you can tell, living with schizophrenia might be just a little bit hard. Could only imagine. But at the same time, there's never been a time more in my life where I've learned so much about the world. One of these things is just learning about how truly short this life is. If you didn't know, the average lifespan of a man with schizophrenia is under 60 years old. That means, statistically speaking, I'm probably going to be dead 20 years before you and you and you and you and you and most people sitting in the stage right now. Ain't that neat? And another thing is the idea of not being able to have children. Schizophrenia is a very genetically tied condition, meaning that if you as a parent give offspring to people, the chances that those also having schizophrenia is exponentially higher. And so it would be pretty selfish of me to bring someone into this world to suffer the same curse that I have to for the rest of my life. Then there's also the small, but still possible chance that someday my symptoms get so bad that I'll never be able to do anything you might consider normal again. I might just be locked away in a psych ward for the rest of my life. And so I don't take anything for granted anymore. Every meal, every step, every breath I take is a reminder to me of just how easily this can finally defeat me someday. But more than anything, worse than any hallucination or delusion or any realization you can make about life in general, is the social sanctions that come from having schizophrenia. The way that somebody will treat you differently and look at you differently just for something that you can't control. See, the thing is, I have moments of what I like to call my fun times in public sometimes. The thing is, though, if you didn't know that I had schizophrenia, you would probably think of me as a massive weirdo. Let me give you a concrete example. One of the symptoms that I haven't experienced, or rather I haven't mentioned yet, is the fact that my reaction time and my general spatial awareness just is not quite as good as it used to be. There are times where sometimes my mind will wander off for up to an hour at a time. I'll stare at a screen for about half an hour, and when I look up, those half hours have passed and I won't remember anything about it. There are actual gaps in my memory where I have no recollection of what happened during that time. You see, though, from the outside, if you didn't know that this was a result of a disorder and not just who I am, you would probably think of me as really rude. Thing is, when I'm having one of my fun times, I don't exactly make much eye contact or respond. And that comes off as not really listening, and it's oftentimes off-putting. There are other examples too, but the point I'm trying to get at is that I weird people out a lot. People think that I don't notice and I'm just completely ignorant as to how I make them feel, but I do, and it hurts. See, here's the thing about having hallucinations and delusions and every other medical checkup you can possibly think of. At the end of the day, those things are adaptable. Over time, I've gotten a lot better at realizing when I'm seeing something that's not there, when I'm hearing something that's not actually talking to me. But the one thing that I've never been able to get used to is the discomfort I bring people over something that I can't control. And what makes it even worse is that I know I can't tell everyone that I'm like this, because for every person who will welcome me with open arms and say, "Ethan, I understand," an equal amount of people will never be able to see me the same way again. It's a choking feeling. The desire to want everyone to know your story and know that this is who I am. But knowing that no matter who you tell, not everyone will truly understand that just because I don't have burn marks on my skin or missing limbs does not mean that I'm not having a human experience or that I'm not going through some of the worst suffering you could ever possibly imagine. And so it's taught me you can never assume. You can never assume what anyone has gone through, because someone could be the most happy and jovial person you've ever met on the outside, but the most terrified you've ever known the second those doors close. After all, I know because I'm the exact same way. After all, how could you have guessed That the guy who walks around with an SPD powerlifting belt, that the guy who likes to play Christian worship songs that all sound the same with a guitar and cello, that the political science student with a goofy grin and a profound lack of social skills secretly dreads every waking moment of his existence simply because of a condition that he never asked for and never chose to have. Everyone in this room has had an experience that has changed them so much that they can never possibly revert back to who they were before that. At the end of the day, we are all psychotic in our own ways. Maybe you can't see literal monsters like I can. Maybe you can't hear voices that tell you to kill yourself. But we all have those doubts and demons. Those times where we don't feel like we're in touch with our reality. And it's equally important to be kind as well. Now, I know you may be thinking, Ethan, did you really just go through this whole talk for the whole message to just be kind? I guess I did. I guess I did because with every difficulty and every block road that comes with life, sometimes we forget that at the end of the day, we are all just human beings, each of us defined by a human experience that no matter how hard someone may try to replicate, no one will ever be able to. To quote Heath Ledger, madness is like gravity. Sometimes all it takes is a little push. But as true as that is, it's just as equally true that sometimes all it takes is a single reaching hand to pull us back from that madness. I'm not saying you have to be a saint to everyone you meet. But to that kid that you judged because you thought they were weird, give them a second chance. To the friend who's been absent, who hasn't been answering your text recently, just give them a call, even if they don't respond back. To the person you're sitting next to right now, just let them know that you care. Because sometimes that's the only difference between life and death. Sometimes that's the only thing that you'll get to know about their story if you didn't try beforehand. Now, I know you may be thinking, Ethan, this is all so bleak. And it is. I'd be a liar to say if it was anything but. But I say this all because it took losing everything in my life to realize just how much I once had. There won't ever be a day ever again where I won't have to take Adderall, Xanax, lithium, Caplyta, hydroxyzin, and about 1 million other drugs, never worrying about the symptoms worsening again, never worrying about what people think of me just because I'm schizophrenic. At a certain point, I thought that this life wasn't worth living. And for an even shorter duration of time, I wanted to act upon what I thought. I can't tell you what changed. Maybe it was just my inner voice. Maybe it was just the grace of God. Maybe it was just the winds of fate itself. But I remember that one day I heard a voice. I mean, naturally. But for once, I knew that this was my own. And it told me to carry on. Because as hard and as horrible and how terrible and as arduous this life can be, it is something that is worth living. Something worth fighting for. So let's start from the top. My name is Ethan, and I was diagnosed with schizophrenia in the October of 2023. When I first left WashU, I had no idea what this journey would do to me. And for so long, this disorder has controlled every aspect of how I feel and how I live. For so long, the guilt and shame of knowing that this is who I am, but not having anyone to tell, has been the reason why I've lived in fear. But I decided to give this talk today in front of hundreds of people, most of whom had no idea that I was this way just 15 minutes ago, to say that this can no longer control how I feel. That as much as I wish my biggest problems in life were still learning about radial nodes in Chem 111 and cost curves in Mech 290, that no matter how much I wish I could just live a normal life again, that this is who I am. My name is Ethan, and I am schizophrenic. I am a complete and utter insane human being. And I do have to take about 1 million drugs just to stay intact. And I do have to see 3 different therapists just to make sure I feel heard, one of whom is here to see how far I've come in this journey. And I do live in the perpetual agony and loneliness of knowing that no matter who I talk to, no one will ever truly understand the pain that I have to live with every minute of every day. But that's okay. Because while this is what I am, it doesn't have to be who I am. At least not the only thing. Because while this is what I am, I'm also other things. I am a student. I am a cook. I am a Catholic, a man of great, deep faith. But most importantly and most simply of all, I am more than a list of symptoms. That if there's even one person on this entire planet who truly cares about this journey, that's all that matters. My name is Ethan, and that's the only reason I need to live this life. Friedrich Nietzsche has a quote that says, "To live is to suffer, and to survive is to find some meaning in that suffering." As I stand before you today, I can say that my suffering still hasn't ended, and I already know that for however many long years I have left, it never will. But at least now, schizophrenia is no longer the only thing that defines what my life is. So, to my voices, to my visions, and to the chemical imbalance in my brain that has made my life so fun. Don't worry, I already know you're probably going to be the reason I'm dead prematurely. Before that happens, in the meanwhile, I'd like to at least try to do something that's meanwhile. My name is Ethan, and starting today, April 4th, 2024, I hope I can learn what it means to survive again. Thank you.